John Wick Chapter 2 is once again directed by Chad Stahelski, and it sees the return of Keanu Reeves in the title role of John Wick, and I kind of feel like I am probably the last person on earth to actually see this movie, being that here in Australia it's only just come out and I missed all the advanced screenings and everything, and I've finally seen it. So this is very much a continuation of the first movie. There is a reason why this movie is called John Wick Chapter 2. It starts off about 4 days after the first movie, and the beginning of this movie is kind of a conclusion to the first film, and it then picks up the story for this flick. So John Wick is pretty much forced out of his retirement that he's trying desperately to get into, and he's given the task of assassinating quite a prominent figure in the underground world by someone who's involved in all this. Now, after his task is complete, a bounty gets put on John Wick's life, and pretty much everybody is after him, and things get out of control, things get heavy, and holy crap, things go down in a big way for John Wick. Now, when the first film came out in 2014, my god, I thought it was one of the best action movies we've had in the past decade. It was brilliant. It was stylish, creative, inventive, and all the stunts were real. This wasn't a film that relied on overuse of CG or anything like that. You know, the fights were choreographed and beautifully shot. I loved that film, and this one was no different. Like I said, it's very much a continuation of the first chapter. In much the same way that, like, you know, the second Lord of the Rings was a continuation of the first one, like, you can't really sort of compare them as two different movies because it was one story. And so once again, we're treated to some of the best action sequences you're going to see in a movie this year. Again, the fight scenes were not just well choreographed, but the way they were shot. They're shot from a wide distance so you can see what's going on, and they didn't rely on really quick cuts. In some of the fight scenes, there were hardly any cuts. You can actually tell that these people were involved in a choreographed fight that didn't rely on heavy editing and close-up camera work. They were absolutely a joy, and once again, you can see that Keanu Reeves committed to this role and did so many of his own stunts, not just the fighting stuff, but the driving stuff, the shooting stuff. It was all him. And one thing I loved is that the gunshots in this movie were deafening. I mean, if you've ever fired a real gun before, you know how scary those things are. And a lot of times in movies, you know, when gunfights are going on, it doesn't really emphasize just how loud guns are. In this movie, they just about had me covering my ears. They were so loud, so I really dug that. It just added to, like, how hardcore and brutal the fight scenes were, and wow, they were really brutal. There were some scenes in this movie that had me flinching in my seat because, yeah, there's some scenes in this movie that ain't for the squeamish. So Keanu Reeves, once again, was just a joy to watch in this movie. I mean, you know, for so long the dude was criticized for being kind of a wooden actor and stuff, and look, yeah, in a way he is, but it just suits this role so perfectly. I really hope there is a lot of John Wick movies starring Keanu Reeves in the future, because this guy was just born for this role. And I've got to hand it to Australia's own Ruby Rose, who is finally giving a good performance in an action movie. I mean, previously this year, we've seen her in Resident Evil, whatever the heck it was called, followed by Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage. I mean, I loathed those two movies, and, you know, I was kind of thinking to myself, she's not making too many good choices here, but in this movie, I thought she was great. It might have been because she was playing a deaf mute, but, you know, maybe that's her calling. John Wick 2 was also a gorgeous movie to look at. The cinematography was absolutely amazing, some really great camera work, and the music, again by Tyler Bates, was fantastic. It was, you know, again, it was sort of gritty and real. It just suited the movie so perfectly. And above all, I just love so much how, you know, in the first John Wick, they established like a world, you know, that this movie was taking place in, of this underground society of hit people where, you know, they have all these rules and that kind of thing, where this movie, it expanded on that. So I really had to commend it for taking this established world and building on it and making it bigger. It was absolutely perfectly done. So all the way through, I'm just loving this movie. I'm just drinking in these incredible action sequences, and it wasn't until the ending, though, that I was just like, oh my god, this movie is incredible. The ending of this movie is perfect. It is one of the best movie endings I've seen in I don't know how long. Because it's one of those endings that just desperately makes you want to see the third one. I mean, there is a third one coming, and what they've done in the ending of this one, not going to give away any spoilers, but it was such a massive cliffhanger and a really intriguing one. Like, I walked out of the theater saying to my friend that I just desperately wanted to see that third chapter right now. Now, while I really love this movie, you know, like the first one, again, it wasn't without its flaws. For one thing, the runtime of this movie was 20 minutes longer than the first one, and I don't really think it needed to be. There were a couple of scenes that I just thought dragged a little bit, not too much, but once you get to the end of these lull moments, like, it does pick up again, you know, so it wasn't too bad. But the other thing for me was that, like, the motivation in the first one for John Wick to do what he does, with the whole thing with the dog and his wife and everything, you know, I don't know, it was kind of more of an emotional motivation for him to basically murder everybody. Whereas this one, I kind of thought he was just sort of forced back into it. It wasn't quite as poignant a reason for him to do what he does. So yeah, that was a little bit of a letdown. And not only that, the bad guy in this was just kind of a run-of-the-mill bad guy. There wasn't anything really that interesting about him. So was this movie better than the first one? No. Was it worse than the first one? Definitely not. Look, I really just feel like you could watch the two movies back to back. And when the third one comes out, you could easily just do a 3-movie marathon, I'm sure. So that being said, I've got no choice but to give John Wick Chapter 2 the exact same score I gave Chapter 1, and I'm giving John Wick Chapter 2 a 9 out of 10. So look, if you've seen the first one, if you love that movie, you need to see this one and see it on the big screen so you can really appreciate what went into making it. Or if you just love a damn good action movie, look, you can't go past this one. Like I said, I'm going to be hard-pressed to probably find a better action movie this year, I think. So thank you for taking the time to watch my review of John Wick Chapter 2. If you've seen it, which you probably have because everybody's seen it by now, let me know what you thought of it. Let me know what you thought of it in terms of the first one. Did you like it more? Did you like it less? And why? Drop me some comments either here or on Facebook. All the social media links are in the description below because I like to talk about movies and I would love to talk about movies with you. Catch you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.